Dad, he got 3,000 pounders in 2 days. This is up the reef, Marlin fishing. I think there was only the 2 deckies and Dad. Got one on very quickly and it was a beast. He fought it for like 4 hours and killed it and weighed it, and it was his personal best, 1,254 pounds. And then they said, look, it's only early in the afternoon, why don't we go out again? Went out, got another one on, and it was another fish over 1,000. And then they said, let's go out again the next day, and got another one on that was over $1,000. And he just went, this is ridiculous. He goes, I just put the button up and I just kept pushing that drag right up and hanging on, and eventually, bang!
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to another episode of the Rising Tidecast. Today, I'm excited to have Peter Jenyns, the owner of Professional Boat Care, amongst many other things, a very successful YouTube channel, and a lifetime's worth of wild stories on the water. So I'm really excited to hear more about your journey, Peter, and a couple of those stories you mentioned. That'll be awesome. So welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
Yeah. So your business now specializes in like the management and detailing of clients' boats, which to me sounds like it's kind of come full circle from where you started growing up on the water with your family, largely in Cairns. Is that right? Is that where it all kind of started for you?
That's pretty right. I've ended up where I probably should have been right from the beginning. If you go right back to where it all started, it's actually about 2 or 3 generations ago. So my grandparents on both sides were boating and fishing type people. So my sister and I often joke we had no choice. We were always going to be boating and fishing type people. So, so if you look back at, say, on my dad's side, my grandfather there, Herb Jenyns, he's the one who bought South Pacific, which is the boat that's featured so heavily in my life. It was in our family for 43 years. And then on my mother's side was her father was a fisherman, and he was a noted cartoonist, actually. Did all the political cartoons for the Courier Mail for 30 years and the London, what was that big paper over there, the News of the World. He was the cartoonist for that just after the war. So, yeah, and anyway, he also authored a couple of books. One of them was called Fishing for the Fun of It. So we sort of got it on all sides. And then even Mum, she's a great fishing person. She's caught sailfish and all sorts of stuff. I got these beautiful old black and white shots of all this stuff,
Yeah.
So we were always going to be boating people. I was always going to be a boating person, I suppose.
That's awesome. So tell me about that time in your life, like when the water and, growing up, it sounds like from day dot came into your life. Like what's those earliest memories you have of growing up on the water?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's more about the photos I have. And I'm in nappies down the bay, and we used to do trips up to the Bunker Group, which is Lady Musgrave Island, which was quite an adventure back then, especially with I think I was 6 weeks old or something like that. No, 6 months old I was on my first trip to the reef.
Wow.
And I did that a few times. In fact, one time they thought they'd lost me off Fraser Island in the middle of the night. They found me hiding in the locker in the galley.
Anything can happen out there.
Can you imagine? Mum said they turned the motor off. They were calling out, did a circle. It must have been horrific.
Oh, my God. Anyway, that's the panic, the pure panic.
I know, just a shocker.
Those are not the risks that you think of when you have a baby and growing up on the water.
The biggest risk was Mum going, how am I going to wash all these nappies at sea for 2 or 3 weeks?
That's crazy.
They were my earliest memories. And of course, Dad was already a competitive sailor then. So, that always featured, there was always the fin sailing dinghy and all that sort of stuff was happening at the same time. So, yeah, look, it's just always been going down the bay or boating,
And, there's a crossover, not in my story, but in my wife's story. Her parents had a barramundi boat up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. So she grew up for her first 2 years on the water, on the boat as well.
There you go.
Same nappy changes. Mom got real good at filleting fish.
Yeah, well, you're starting a generational boating thing, I hope.
How do you think that taste of salt water so young in your life has shaped you?
It really has. And obviously I took to it. I remember one of my mother's friends used to come over and visit, and she'd say, I think your son has a condition called boat grip, because I was walking around with a toy boat in my hand the whole time. So I was fully obsessed with boats. There's no doubt about it. And of course, then I went on after school into the advertising industry. Even there, all I was doing was drawing boats and designing boats, and I always had to get back to boats somehow.
Then take me back to that time. Like, what year was that? And I know there was some charter operations up there. Was that at the same time?
Yeah, well, I guess if we just go back even further, we could probably start with Dad, and because all this Cairns fishing and everything that I've been doing lately, that all really started with Dad and what he started. If we look at his life, I think I've told you, he was an Olympic sailor. So he went to 3 Olympics in the fin class, Rome, Tokyo and Munich, I think it was. But while the sailing was all happening, my mother's father, who was the fisherman, and my parents had married, so the fishing sort of was being pushed onto Dad a little bit. And then my grandfather, Herb, who had the boat. So next thing, they're all going off on these fishing trips. So Dad wasn't into fishing right at the beginning. He was from about 10 when they got the first boat. And then his sailing, competitive sailing was what his life really was. But anyway, they started fishing, and they started fishing here off Brisbane on the boats. And then they discovered the Marlin fishing off here, which was only the small baby black marlin and sailfish. So no one had gone wide enough to find the blue marlin at that stage, because this is the 1950s. So then Dad obviously got a taste for fishing, and then he, got right into it, joined the Moreton Bay Game Fish Club. He was the president in the late 60s or early 70s at one stage. And then, of course, the Cairns fishery started. They caught the big grander.
When was that?
Early 60s, I'd say. Within a few years, Dad's bought himself a 25-foot Bertram and a Bedford truck, and he's tows it solo all the way up to Cairns, and then he'd have these couple of mates fly in, I guess, and meet him up there, and they'd go out. In fact, the early days, before the 25 Bertram, that's right, the first year he took up a 21-foot Savage, trailer boat. He said, we had a 44-gallon drum of fuel. We got on the back deck somehow, and we'd go out to Green Island, which was uninhabited at that stage, off Cairns. He said we'd toss it in the water and roll this drum of fuel up and set up base on the beach, and we'd go out marlin fishing every day, which was just unbelievable back then. So that would have been the mid to late 60s, right?
I'm just picturing a 20-foot boat on the outside of the reef with the big swell day. Like, holy
now we see
moly.
them occasionally, don't we?
Yeah.
There's a lot of trailer boats out there these days. Anyway, and then he got the 25 birdie, and he caught a couple of big fish. There's some great shots of him weighing sort of 600-700 pounders in Innisfail, so he must have gone out of there a bit. So he got a real taste for it, and then the boats started, and then they bought South Pacific 2, which was the 74-foot Norman Wright built boat, which is the boat we had for 43 years in the family. From that year, that started going up as the mothership. And then he had the 25 Bertram, I think, 1 year. Then he got a 28-foot Bertram. And that's when we started towing that behind South Pacific all the way to Cairns, which is 800 nautical miles from Brisbane. And he did that every year for 43 years. And then we upgraded the game boat to a 32-foot Blackfin, which he bought in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, and shipped that out. And then that was our game boat for 15 years. And then so Dad started, and all his friends used to come up, but then it started to turn into a business. And so he sort of, and meanwhile, Dad's in business. He's running a business in Brisbane. A charter business was born, really, and back in the 70s. And it's sort of for 43 years, he went up there and did it every year.
That's amazing.
And of course, back then, there was no motherships really in the early days. So we were suddenly this great option, because all those guys with their old game boats that would do, 14 knots at best, it was a long run out every day. No one was sleeping behind the reef every night like we do now. So to have a mothership out there was a great thing. So we started getting other boats chartering us as well. But Dad ran his own show with both boats. But then occasionally we'd have another game boat alongside us. It was great times. And then, of course, I was at school through most of this. But in 1981, I was deemed old enough and allowed to go to the reef and see what this whole world was all about. And that was a great trip as well, I got to say.
You've seen your dad go up for seasons while you've been in school. You've been too young, and he finally says that to you, that it's time. What was that like for you?
It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And then I met this guy, this American deckhand who had worked with us for 2 years prior. And Dad said, righto, now Charlie's going to take you and the new boat to Cairns. Okay. And so Charlie, I didn't know who Charlie was, but Charlie's Charlie Perry, like he's a famous guy in the world of marlin fishing now, was the best wire man at the time and all this. He's a great guy. So I've got this Charlie, and I'm like a 15-year-old kid, brand new game boat that's come from America. We put the chair in it, the riggers are on, and off we go. And Dad had said, no, you've got to run it hard. Run this new motors in, you've got to run it pretty hard. So we did like 32 knots all the way to Cairns. We were the fastest boat in game boat in Queensland. It was a great experience. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. You've really stacked the odds there of having a great first trip. What was that like for you, like being out there after all those years?
It was incredible. I remember we were behind the reef. Dad goes, oh, Pete, get in the dinghy and go over and ask that guy over there. Tell them there's drinks on board tonight. Okay, who's that guy? Oh, his name's Brazaka. Oh, okay. So I go over. Oh, I don't know if I can say this, but they were shooting their wine bottles in the morning.
How times have changed. No,
How times have changed. So they put their guns down as I approached. Who are you? Oh, I'm Ron's son. Oh, what do you want? You don't look like Ron's son. Well, I am. Well, he said, come for a drink. So, I got to meet all these incredible people like Brazaka and Peter Bristow. We became great friends. All the old skippers from that era I got to know really well as a kid, and they were like heroes to me. I couldn't believe I was meeting these people. And then every day, I was just like this kid just going, all right, let's go marlin fishing. And we'd go out around the reef and you'd see these giant fish. And it's just mind-blowing and, changed my life.
Hooked instantly.
There's no going back.
How long was that first trip for? What'd you catch? And then I guess when it ended, I can only imagine you figuring out ways to get back up there as soon as possible.
Well, look, most of my time at the reef, because I was either at school or then I had my job in advertising. So I was only ever going up there for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So I wasn't doing the full season. But yeah, I pretty well just worked out a way to go back every year. Dad would go, okay, well, we could use you for a couple of weeks. That other deckie's starting later. And, so I'd always get a little gig on the boat as a deckhand. And if I didn't, I'd be on the boat anyway, riding along and enjoying it, So it was good. So, well, and look, see, Dad was running his business back here in Brisbane, which is kind of funny. It was a lingerie business. If people find that quite hilarious.
Yeah, that's great.
Big game fisherman had this lingerie business.
I'm looking for the crossover of maybe a mothership or something.
Yeah,
I've heard things. Yeah.
So we had this, I was the kid that grew up. What does your dad do? Oh, he makes bras and underpants, it's always a bit embarrassing. But so he was running his business back here. So he'd only ever go up for, I don't know how he wrangled it really, but he'd do like 8 weeks marlin fishing, skipper him the game boat. And then we'd have a skipper on the mothership so that they'd take the boat up for him and then he'd come in, do the marlin fishing and then get back to work.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. What a cool thing to almost like, be part of the pioneering stage, right, of what it is today.
There's my half-brother, Bo, who's like a renowned game fisherman. So my parents divorced when I was about 5 or something. Sally was 3, my sister. Anyway, and Dad remarried and had 3 more boys. So we call it the second litter. So Bo's the eldest out of that, 3 boys. And he took to game fishing, like he was from being a little kid. The other 2 didn't really. Bo was always there and in amongst it. And then he ended up going up there and working with Greg Edwards on the first assegai that was ever built. And then because of who he knew and what he did, he ended up going and, I think he was fishing 260 days a year, he told me at one stage. And he was doing the whole world circuit. So he'd do, Hawaii. They did Madeira, Ghana, worked on all the good boats with some great crew. Then he married a girl from Palm Beach in Florida.
He's basically doing the Bad Company World Tour before it was the World Tour.
Yeah, yes. To a certain extent. And speaking of that, so did Sally, my sister. So she was like the chef and worked on our boat for years and then worked on a few other motherships. And then we had this before Bad Company, there was one called the Madam and the Hooker. Some of the older guys will remember it. It came out to Australia. It was like a big oil rig support vessel converted to a mothership. And then it had a GNS game boat called the Hooker, 44 foot, I think, or 48. And they had this big dry dock sort of box that would slide off the back of the big boat, sink it, drive the game boat into it, pump it up, and then they'd drag it up on the back deck. And so seeing with this 44-foot game boat, and it came to Cairns, and Sally got to know that, we knew some of the crew on there, Scotty Levin and a few of the Marlin deckhands, and Sally ended up getting a job on there as like the second in charge in the galley, and went from Cairns to Tahiti and then right across to the States on that. And they were, fished their whole way across. And
that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Bad Company wasn't the first, but he's just next level,
Yeah.
And so Bo now lives in Florida. He's still involved in all the marlin fishing world.
Oh, once you're in it, it's hard to get out, honestly.
He was Mate of the Year on Marlin magazine once. He was a cover boy.
How good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
Well and truly in your veins, I have to say.
Yeah. So we got it. And Sally ended up being on TV here in Queensland doing seafood cooking on a show called Coast Watch. So, yeah, we certainly got it all in our veins. All right. There's no escaping it.
That's awesome. You mentioned that, your dad had 43 seasons up there and you're on number 35, just...
Not full seasons.
Not full seasons, but like 35,
trips.
Different trips heading up there. And seeing it from how it used to be done, as far as like the marlin fishing and getting up there and going from the, drums in the boat to what it is now. Like, I'm interested, like, how different is the style of fishing? Because I know there's been so much innovation and iterations on how they catch, whether it's dead bait, skip bait, swimming. Like, I'm sure they didn't just immediately make the perfect swim baits to get the marlin in. Like, what was it like back then?
I mean, largely it hasn't changed in a way. Like, we're still a great dead bait fishery as a preferred way to catch them, I suppose. But yeah, look, things like Peter Wright was very instrumental in trying to push the circle hooks, which was a big change because back in the day, we used to have the J hooks and the poor old fish would gag and whatever. But now we're releasing fish in good nick because of the circle hooks. So that's been a good innovation. A lot more lure fishing, I suppose, which is great. And, I'm on a private boat for the last... that was a good thing. It all sort of came to an end for me for a while. Like, Dad's stopped going and then we sold the boats and I was like, oh, well, that was a great part of my life. Maybe I'll get back there one day and take my boys and show them what it's all about. But next thing, I've started professional boat care, and then I've got a client who loves game fishing. So I said, mate, you got to see this up here. It's unbelievable. And so that guy and I have done 10 years in a row on his little 35 Caribbean, which you'll see on YouTube. There's a few videos there of those times. And so that private boat fishing is what I do. So I'm not just on there I'm just there to be a guide, really, and skipper so he can be the angler. And so that's been great to get me back up there. We do a lot more lure fishing just because we get tired of bringing baits and trying to catch baits and stuff. So
it's a lot of work, yeah.
It is a lot of work. I mean, everyone's just, the gear's better. The boats are so much better. Everything's, and we've got Starling.
Going up this year with it on deploy, it definitely changes things.
Can I just say, you're just on the coolest boat too. I'm very jealous you're up there on that boat.
Yeah. Oh, man.
With Kleiny,
Yes. Yeah, Kleiny will be on a different boat this year, I think, because deploy just got sold.
Yeah,
but it's just an amazing experience in general. And it's such a great way to disconnect. And I'm sure that's why you're part of the reason why your clients love it to go up there as well, as seeing the amazing fishery and everything.
There's nothing like it. That's what Jim on the Skidgy was saying the other day. He's just going, there's no other fishery or thing that I can do that's like this, where you're out on the reef in the evenings. It's just another level of amazingness, and those big fish.
Oh, yeah. That's just icing on the cake almost at that stage.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's right. It's just the whole experience of being there. And for me, it's even deeper. I mean, I love the fact that I've been going for so long and I've got to know some of those guys. So all those deckies that back when I was young, they're all the captains now. It's fantastic. You have this lifelong sort of friendship that you only see them when you're up there. But it's just it's a great bond, It's
amazing. And I'll talk more about that because I think that's something that's really amazing about the content that you produce on your YouTube channel. You can tell the history and how connected you are to the industry. But you've had a lot of time up there, whether it was your time or hearing about it through your family and just time on the water. Like, if you think back about, the life that you've had and being on the water and the experiences that you've got to do, what's something that stands out to you, like a lesson from those 35 seasons that you've done or been part of with your family that stands out to you that drives you today?
Well, I mean, it's just things like the camaraderie and the whole sort of community of the boating world and the way we all look after each other and look out for each other. There's a lot of that happens up there. The thing about up on the reef is all those crews, all the captains, they're all the real deal. They're serious. The boats are well maintained. They know their thing, and they're not fly-by-nighters that are just buying a boat and then they're gone next week and bought a property or something. They're lifelong boaters. And I think that's, for me, and that's what we are, our family. I'm what am I, third generation now. So, and I love that. And I love sniffing out other lifelong generational boaters, because they're in it for the long haul. And I don't know, I think we've all got good values, and we all understand the ocean, and we understand boats, and we understand how to treat everyone, because we're all going to need, you never know when you're going to call on someone to help out, or when you're in a bother or something, or, I don't know. There's that, I suppose there's all that, there is that looking after each other and looking out for each other. But that's not to say, some new guy that's come in and bought the big boat and wants to make a big splash in the scene. Look at Bad Company, for example. Yeah. And it's amazing what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
And initially you think, oh, let's wait and see. But he's the real deal. He's been fishing all his life. Mm-hmm. So, you've got to give him credit for that. And what an amazing program to watch.
Oh, it is crazy. It's so good. To your point, like the whole thing about community and looking after each other, whether they're your competition for a charter or you don't know them, but you know of them, it is that like looking out for each other, helping each other. It's a great way to be.
Egos are a bad thing, like the real guys don't have those egos. And we all know we're going to have a season where we don't get the big fish or enough fish. And that can happen to the best guy. The guy who got the most last year, he's back to number 3 or 4 this next. You can't have an ego. You just got to know what goes around comes around and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, good way to live. You mentioned a couple stories when we initially talked about doing this podcast.
Oh, look, there's been some incredible stories. Dad had no charter for a couple of days. This is up the reef, Marlin fishing. So the crew said, come on, Ron, we'll take you fishing. Been a while since you've been in the chair. And he's like, oh, okay, why not? So I think there was only the 2 deckies and Dad went out in the Salt Shaker, our game boat, got one on, very quickly, and it was a beast. And he fought it for like 4 hours and got it up. And then they thought, you know what, we're going to take this. Well, because back in those days, you killed fish a bit more than now, obviously. Yeah, they killed it and weighed it, and it was his personal best, and it went 1254, 1,254 pounds.
Wow.
Took it back in, and they weighed it, and then they said, look, it's only early in the afternoon. Why don't we go out again, get the afternoon bite? And they're like, okay. Went out, got another one on, and it was another fish over 1,000. He got 2 the first day, so he got his 1254. Went out, got another one on. I think he fought it for an hour or 2, and they jumped it off. I think that was fine. Dad was relieved. He's already exhausted.
Talk about a tax on the body.
Then they had a party that night, celebrating. There's no
you have to have a raft up after that one.
Yeah. Oh, and the raft ups we used to have, they were next level. No one does it anymore. The people you used to meet were so special. And then they said, let's go out again the next day. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Okay, righto. What else are we going to do? So they went out for the Arvo again and got another one on that was over $1,000. And he just went, this is ridiculous. And he goes, I just put the button up and I just kept pushing that drag right up and hanging on, and eventually bang. And I was so happy I lost it.
Oh my God.
But he got 3,000 pounders in 2 days.
That is wild.
People go their whole life out there and not get one, so it's sort of funny. I've got the tail. The tail is mounted in my house now. It's very special, precious.
You have to send us a photo of that.
I will. And Bo's got the bill, the big bill. So.
That's wild. Well, I hope he went home and bought a lotto ticket.
Well, he used all his luck up, I think. But right. No, that was great.
That is insane.
Things that happen up there, huh?
That's nuts. Yeah.
I saw him go for 14 days without a bite. And then you can go out and get $3,000.
$3,000 in 2 days.
That's what happens, yeah.
That has to be one of the most epic stories up on the reef.
Yeah. Another good one. So we had this English charter. So these English guys, they came out for 10 years in a row. They were fantastic. Got to know them very well. George, the angler, he got this fish on. No one saw the bite. It was late. It was a huge fight. And he's a left-handed angler. and Dad could see him. Okay, I wasn't on board. My sister was on board for this one. But apparently George was grabbing the handle with two hands every now and then. And everyone's going, don't do that because this part will knock the drag lever back, which it did. And it free spooled while he's got this fish on, and it all went into
Big
a bunch
bird's
of
nest. Yeah.
And so they're frantically trying to peel the line out while Dad's thundering backwards, trying to keep up to this fish. Because what's happened was there's an overlap in the line. You know how sometimes you can get this weird knot and it's there and it won't come out. And so it's going, and he's just going, stop, oh, I worked so hard to get all that line. And they're going, we've got to get it all out. We've got to get it all out. Anyway, they still didn't know what they were dealing with. Anyway, back into the fight. Everything's going well. It's night time now. It's like about 9 o'clock at night. They had the floodlights on, and apparently the first sight of this fish, it just came out about 30 foot back, and everyone just went, oh, get the gaffs, you know. And they thundered back on it, grabbed it, gaffed it, and it weighed 1340. It's our biggest fish we ever got.
That is wild.
Yeah, 1340 with a giant shark bite out of it. So Dad says it probably would have been close to 1,400 pounds.
Wow.
So they weighed, so it got bitten on the way into Lizard.
Oh, really?
Somewhere between getting it onto the beach at Lizard and coming in from the reef.
Yeah.
So they weighed it on the gallows there. So 1340.
That is nuts. Overcoming all the obstacles too with the big bird's nest, and there would have been a bit of black smoke bellowing around the back of the boat.
Oh, mate, it was so exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
That
was mad.
Yeah, the Lizard, I've only been there once, and the amount of sharks off right in the anchorage there.
So bad.
Oh, yeah, that would have been...
You just don't want to jump in.
No, not a chance.
It wasn't that bad then, but we did have, because, you know, you'd often have people with fish dead to weigh. Yeah. And so the bay did get tiger sharks swimming around in it a fair bit. So that's what happened.
Crazy. That's wild. I'm sure you got one more. Tell me one more story.
I can tell you some that I can't tell.
Yep. We're all for it. You can use fake names if you want.
Yeah.
What's one about the boat stolen?
Well, that goes back a bit. So that's not South Pacific 2, the boat. The previous boat was South Pacific 1, which my grandfather had built. She was a 50-foot Watson Wright built timber. Like, she was like the flagship boat of Brisbane at the time. So this is 1967 that it got stolen. He built it in 57. Like, he had the Prime Minister on it. You know, it was that sort of boat. So it was a big deal when it got stolen. So it got stolen out of the Brisbane River here where it was kept. And, you know, off they went. And it turned out it was these two guys, a New Zealand guy and an American. And the American had a 10-year-old boy with him. And they were dodgy encyclopedia salesmen, right? So they started in Melbourne, and they go and knock on doors. We'll sell you the latest encyclopedias. Give us your deposit, and the books will come. So they took all the deposits. Books never came. And when it got too hot in Melbourne, they went to Sydney and did the same thing. And then they moved to Brisbane. And then they thought, we've got to get out of here. And the New Zealander had a girlfriend in New Zealand who was going to have a baby soon. So he said, we've got to get to New Zealand. How are we going to get out of the country? Oh, we'll steal this boat. So it's quite a thing. They hired another little boat, loaded all the gear on it, climbed on in the middle of the night, and off they went down the river. They changed the name. They painted it while they were on their way, just to change the colour and appearance of the boat.
What?
Went past Lord Howe Island, spoke to the guys there on the radio, so we knew it had gone to there. But meanwhile, my grandfather, he was a well-to-do businessman, and this is front page Courier Mail, and it was a big thing. So he was chartering a plane going up and down the coast, Sydney and up north, thinking this is its range, you know, no luck. Anyway, then we got word from New Zealand authorities that they had taken these guys off a boat, left the boat abandoned in the corals in the middle of the Tasman Sea. And, we realised it was the original South Pacific. So my grandfather and Dad jumped on a plane, much to my mother's horror. She had just had my sister, Sally, was just born. So off he went to help his father get the boat. Anyway, they eventually they got a salvage boat, beat them to it. So old Herb chartered his own salvage tug, but they were a day behind, and he said the seas were terrible and we couldn't catch them and we had to give up. So these other guys salvaged the boat, brought it into Auckland. It was left out there for 3 weeks, just rolling around out in the ocean. abandoned, and they got it in, and it was a big deal. Like this needs to be a story sometime. There's photos of the Auckland harbour with just crowds, and it was on the news, and these people. Oh, and so what happened was, so they'd run out of food and water, and a commercial ship was going by, and the one guy said, "I'm going to call them. We need help. We've got to get out of here. Give ourselves up." And he said, "No, you're not." And he got our got our rubber mallet that we use on the anchor winch. Gypsy then belted him over the head, and then he grabbed Dad's filleting knife and jabbed it in him. So there's just apparently the boat had blood everywhere. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, he survived,
Wow.
and they, it was the poor little kid through the whole thing. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh my God, traumatic.
And they got flogged in a storm. All the sails were torn, and it was just a complete.
Jesus.
And then my grandfather got a crew together, and they brought it back to Brisbane after the bit of a refit in Auckland.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing story.
Some stories on that boat for sure.
I know.
How about that for your mothership? That's one where you're a few drinks in, and and that story comes out.
That's where the murder, attempted murder was.
That's wild and crazy. They got it back too. Like, obviously, no cell phones. You're out there. You're probably at a radio range, and
yeah,
wow.
And he had that boat right up until 1974 when he sold it to buy the new boat.
After that, like, what was life like? Like, you guys refitted and then sold it and got a new one?
Well, we kept it, that was 67, so we had it for another 8 years or more. So, yeah, that was the boat I used to go up the reef on and stuff, as a little tiny child. So I loved it. It's still here. It's in Manly Harbour right here. Great owners. She's better condition than ever. They really look after it, so it's good. And South Pacific 2's got a new owner too. We sold that about 6 years ago or 8 years ago now. And that's in the sheds at Norman Wright's, getting a full refit on it.
Oh, it'd be beautiful.
God bless him for doing that. She'll live on forever.
Preserving the classics. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know you're into the classics, right? What's your jam?
You know what? I'm into all sorts of boats, I think. I love the old timber boats, obviously, because it just feels like home for me a bit. But I don't ever want to own one.
Yeah.
It's just, mate, that's a passion, and you've got to have really deep pockets and know that you'll never get your money back. That's a wooden boat, right? So I get it. Yeah. They're beautiful and they're a lovely thing to own. And, I'd love to spend all day varnishing, and I love all that. And I did it growing up, that was the thing. But I don't know. I look at, game boats I obviously love as well, and those Assagais are fantastic. I wish we could see more of those American boats out here, but Assagais are a good thing.
Assagais are amazing. There's a new one coming out that'll be amazing up on the reef.
Yeah. They're incredible. And then I like some of those cruising boats, like the production boats like Flemings and Nordhavens. There's some great boats. Palm Beaches down your way. They're just magnificent, beautiful things. And they've all got a purpose. There's so many different areas to boating. You've got the picnic style boating, down on Pittwater and stuff, where you're out for the day on those beautiful palm beaches. And then you've got a bit of it, I've got a client with a Nordhaven here, 68, that we take out, not enough, but we go out and do some great trips into the Coral Sea and up and down the coast, the beautiful Flemings. I mean, there's a boat for all, and I've got myself a new trailer boat now, a cruise craft, which I'm just loving.
Beautiful.
So,
awesome.
Trailer boating works for me, works for my budget.
Yes.
And my life's, I'm always away on other boats a bit, so it's nice to have a boat on a trailer. I can just lock it away.
And good for your maintenance commitment.
Yeah, well, that's right. But it is the most polished boat.
Yes, it would be. I know you did the ad world for a while. So why did you get into that in the first place? And what was that like for you besides drawing boats all day?
And I was in trouble at school for drawing boats a lot too. So advertising, straight out of school, because of my grandfather, I think, and his cartoon, and he's an artist as well. And then Dad's mum was an artist as well. So I've got a fair amount of that sort of arty side to me. So they thought, I think Peter should be in advertising. And so, okay, well, it looks like a fun industry. And by jingoes, it was fun there through the 80s, and I had, as you know, 25 years in advertising. But I'd say the last 5 years or longer, I didn't want to be in advertising. So I was having a bit of a career crisis. But I'd worked in London and the top agency here in Brisbane. It's great times. And I just wasn't as good an ad man as I am a boatman, I think, is the reality. So I had a good mate, Bruce, who has a big recruitment company. So he was a good man to sort of bounce things off. And I said, mate, what are you going to do? You know, I'm nearly 40. I'm over advertising. I'm an old man in a young industry and it's all getting harder. He said, all you do is think and breathe boats. That's, you know, you need to do something in boating. And I thought, well, I can't imagine what, you know. And he said, well, I've got a bloke who looks after my boat down the coast. What happens here at Manly? Are there guys doing that? And I said, I have no idea. You know, I've had to look after boats all my life. Never got paid for it. So I sort of went down to the club here where I'm based now and had a chat to the marina manager. He said, oh, don't do it, you know.
Words
tough.
Of encouragement. Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think Dad even raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You know, but I got to say, I've just never looked back. You know, I've just always been busy. I've never had nothing to do the next day. We've always, and it's just, you know, 16 years now. So, but it was hard at the beginning. I got to say, it was sketchy. There was not a lot of income, and times were pretty terrible there for a while. But I got through it through hard work. You know.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few parts of your story to pluck out there that are really interesting. One is like following your passion. You know, you're meant for something lights you up so much, and you do something and you realize how much more special that thing is. If you could just make it work, would be to do all the time. So I guess what role do you think the passion plays in the fact that, you know, you absolutely love what you do, you have great people talking about you and the work that you do? How does passion play into that?
I think it's massive. You know, I think if you're passionate about, I am really passionate about it, and you'd almost do it for nothing if you can survive that way. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, following your passion, and then you're just naturally going to be good at it, I suppose. And, you know, and I've never been shy of hard work, but, you know, I went from an office job where I used to go home feeling unsatisfied, I suppose, and clean. I come home from this job, you know, and you're sweaty and you're exhausted and everything aches. And you think, what a great day. You know, I've achieved something. Look at that boat, you know.
Yeah.
Look terrible. Now it's just like bling. So there's a great feeling there. Good, satisfaction.
If you think about ad agency, right, I'm sure you had a big impact, but sometimes I think it's hard to see this is what I did and this is what the result is of just like kind of, you know, you or your team or something. It's usually a team effort, but the satisfaction and the transformation that you can see in what you do.
It's more instant.
Yeah, gratifying for sure.
Yeah, true. And then they're just things of beauty, most of them, you know, like you could see beauty in a lot of boats. And I don't know, I'm fully, obviously, OCD. You know, I love everything to be perfect, and look, everything on my desk's straight here. So I'm that sort of guy. And so I'm probably right for being a boat detailer. So,
Not a picture out of alignment behind your head. I love it.
Yeah, they're straight at the moment.
You own at least one laser level, I can tell.
Yeah, that's all this.
I think the other thing there too is like you end up caring about your work a lot more when you're passionate about it, right? So that's probably, you care about not just the work you do, but everything about the business because you live and breathe it and just love it, right? So probably why you've been with the, you know, same kind of private boat for the last 10 years up the reef and all the other clients that never leave you. I think that's a really amazing thing to find that, and part of the work that not everyone has or is lucky to experience working with someone that has that.
Well, I think they, you know, generally you just think, I'm just going to get this guy, he's a boat detailer, I want my boat washed and polished or whatever. But then, yeah, when they do learn there's a bit more to me, you know, and how can they use that? And, you know, so for Jim, obviously Marlin fishing was a beauty. And just last season, I've just had nearly 65 days up there skippering another boat, doing Marlin fishing every day. So that was unreal, but probably too long. My world's not set up to be away that much, you know. So
was that on Marlin when I saw you up there?
Yeah, you saw me in Cooktown. That was the eve of my dad dying.
So that would have been incredibly hard to be away for that moment too.
It was, but you know, it was sort of great in a way, because if I wasn't there on the reef, and that's where his whole sort of world was, to see the love and outpouring from everyone, being, you know, I wouldn't have seen that if I wasn't up there. So it was really special, actually. It was, you know, it's hard. It was terrible. I wanted my family around me and all that sort of thing. But at least I got, you know, some big bear hugs from some of those old captains that I've known all my life. And it was special. And then I flew home and did the eulogy at the funeral and stuff. So
I'm sure that's where he would have wanted you, you know, and that's a special gift, an unexpected gift probably, to be there at that time.
Well, strangely, he was up the reef when his parents died too. He was up there Marlin fishing at the same time. So it's weird.
Okay. So you have kids, just make sure when you're getting older,
yes.
just know where they are at all times.
Exactly. God. You fell out of the tower.
Get a harness on you.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing about you being in the ad agency that I know about you is you developed the creativity that you had, but also an understanding of media and the market and how it all works, right? So I'm curious because you have a very successful YouTube channel, right? You've got over almost 2.6 million views on your channel. You post consistently. I think it's amazing. YouTube's a long game, but you know, I think you have some special elements in there that make it really work for you. And reading through the comments, you know, your followers love what you put out.
It's a bit of a surprise to me in a way. So it's a pleasant surprise. Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, I'm curious, what is it about the ad world maybe that taught you, or that you took from that to shape the YouTube channel and what you do there, and even why you started it?
So old Herb Jenyns, my grandfather, he was a big film he loved it. He had the big latest gear, 16mm cameras, and then the 8mm, and then Dad had them. And so from my earliest trips to the reef, well, you know, I remember this big Perspex box with the old 8mm camera in it that I'd take down and follow him spearfishing and film him wrestling sharks and things. And
that's amazing.
I've always been intimate, you know, and he had those, remember the Nikonos cameras with the screw down. Anyway.
It's funny. I don't know whether it's Nikonos or Nikonos because everything is different in different countries that I live in.
Yeah, you've probably got it right. But, anyway, so I was always into it. You know, I got right into it right from a young age. Did it at school. It was one of my subjects. And I was one of those annoying people that, you know, if you had guests over for a dinner party or something, I go, now, before we do anything, here's my trip to the reef last year. And I'd make them look through all the photo album. I was one of those people. The fact that I could suddenly put it on YouTube, which I only ever did because all my mates would, you know, I'd say, this is how you can look at my latest film. The next thing, I literally went, oh, all the public can see it too. That's a bit out there. But anyway, so I just rolled with it. I started putting stuff up and, you know, don't dig back too far because there's some crap there. Yeah, I got better at it. And it was more because I was going on these great trips too, on some of these, like the Nordhavens and the trips to the reef on Skidgee. And so I just thought, this is good. You know, it's good content to film. People love this stuff. And I'm lucky to be here. So I'm going to film it and I'm going to cut a little movie out of it, which people laugh when I tell them I do it all on my iPhone. And you got all this beautiful gear, which you can tell. I always look at your stuff and just go, oh, look at that. Look at the depth of field, and it's just beautiful.
You know what, though? I think there's a big thing in there, and it's the authenticity is one of them. So it doesn't matter what your camera gear is.
Yeah, you got to capture the moment, right?
Yeah. It's standing out, or it's what a brand expects to align with a brand, but also that's not your brand. And I think the authenticity shows itself more when you are just doing it how you normally would, you know, with your iPhone. I think that's fantastic in there. And the other part is the stories that you tell, the journey you take people on is more important than any piece of camera gear. Right?
Yeah. And look, you know, I am working. So the phone is really, I can't lug around a bigger camera because half the time I'm driving and things. So the phone works really well. It's in my pocket and it's there for the moment and you can capture everything without interfering with your day. So that is the important part.
Like, you've seen success, right, over the YouTube channel. How long have you been doing it for? This is a long time, right?
I don't know. It'd be 10 years I've been putting up videos probably, when I think about how little the kids were on some of the early stuff. But yeah, it's only the last sort of probably 4 or 5 years that it's really started to get a roll on, which is cool. You know, I love it. You know, and it's fun. Every marina you go to and every boat shop or tackle shop, they go, hey, I'll watch your videos. And that's a thrill. You know, I like that. I used to be embarrassed to go, oh, I'm sorry about that. And they go, no, we love it. You know, it's great.
That's amazing. I even have friends at the gym who are not in the industry at all, but love boating and fishing. And they follow, I told them you are on the podcast. They're like, I follow him. I love his content.
Really?
I love his video. Yeah. People,
I love hearing that.
People love it. But, you know, you're deep in the comments. You read everything people write. You know, you put them together from your eyes. What is it about? Like, what's that secret to captivating your audience? Or what is your vision or your intention when you're doing that? Because it works. And I think it's amazing to be able to do that.
Obviously, all the basics, you know, and it's not easy, but I try to keep it steady and my horizons level and all those little things. I always want to capture the great shot. You know, I like to frame it right. So there's all that basic stuff. Then I think some of the things that if you read the comments, as you say, people like it. They think it's relaxing.
It's a fresh take.
My kids tell me to stop talking at the camera too much. Dad, you're talking to the camera too much.
It's working. What do you think it is that keeps people coming back about your videos?
I think they just like seeing cool boats. And, it's also research, obviously. I get a lot of people who discover it because they're going to take their boat up the reef and they jump on YouTube, and it's a research tool now. People go, let's see what if we. And so, I try to put in anchorages, and I don't try and tell too much because you can't, it's just too hard to tell everything. But, just showing an anchorage and trying to give a little tip here and there without being a dickhead that's, ramming information down people's throats. And I don't know, I just keep it chilled, really. And there's no real agenda for me. I'm just doing it because I like doing it. So, and I think it's a great bonus that people enjoy watching it. I like making the movies. I wish I had more time to do it. I've got about 6 to edit still on my phone.
Yeah, right.
I haven't done any of Merlin the whole season last year.
Wow.
I've got to get to that yet. I'm still doing stuff from taking a boat to Sydney last year.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And, what I see in it is like your storytelling is a theme for you, right? You take people on the journey along with you, and you can tell like instantly how much you love what you do and why people love watching them, right? I think, like we said, that you're an authentic guy. You know what you're doing. It's clear you know your way around a boat and on the water. And I think also the part that really cool that stands out to me is that you can tell that you have a deep history on the water, because as you're like pointing out all the things that people are interested in, whether it's boats, captains, marinas, like anything, and it shows that like connection that you have to the industry, which is really awesome. So people love that. That's like your authority piece, I guess, but it's also genuinely just a really easy thing to watch that you learn something from. And I love that.
You know what? That's one of the things I do love about going up and down the coast is you get to see all those people and you have that sort of sense of familiarization and whatever. I know, the people, the marinas, how it all works. So yeah, it's good. It's portrayed, I guess.
As far as how it relates back to your business, do you get leads and do you book clients through your YouTube channel?
Obviously, that was never part of it because I'm not doing videos on how to polish a boat. So the boat polishing side of everything, look, you're always building your brand anyway, I suppose, having that YouTube channel so people know me, and that helps liminally, I guess. With them, there's that guy. And I do try and say, we've got a boat detailing business in Brisbane, and what it has, an area that it has opened up, which has been interesting, is that sort of guided skippering, or, a lot of these boats that I go up the reef on now with guests, they're generally driving their boat themselves because it's their new boat and they want to do that. What they want is just someone there to give them the confidence that, they often hand the wheel to me when we're amongst the bombies.
yeah, here you go. Or at that time at night where it's about
or crossing the bar.
Yeah,
all the nighttime stuff. They just want to feel they've got someone there who can just get them out of trouble, I suppose, if, the weather goes to crap, or why can't we go there? Oh, because when the tide turns, that's a shocking anchorage. And, there's all just those things that I've had to learn through my whole life of doing it. Because someone said to me the other day, would you be interested in taking our boat with us right around the Kimberley coast, around to WA? And I went, not in your life. That's terrifying. I'm not going to those uncharted waters. That's not my backyard. And that, I guess, is how they feel when they land here with a new boat and they go, take us to the reef. And I just go, well, I know it's fine. But they're like, oh, it's a scary prospect. So same thing. I just give them that sense of they're comfortable.
Confidence is a huge thing that you can give people through your content, which is awesome, and through experiencing it with them. And then also you're looking for that when you're a new boater. I just saw you did help a new Riv delivery and look kind of like that first family trip on it.
It was, yeah.
What a cool way to experience your first boat where you can choose when you want to be involved as far as like the captaining role in that. And then also when you just want to sit back, relax, and enjoy why you bought the boat probably in the first place.
Yeah. And as far as it's not really a goal of mine to build that area of my business, at the end of the day, we're a boat detailing business based here, and that's what I like to do. And it means I'm at home every night and all that sort of thing. But it is fun to jump. And some of these people are great, and you've got to be a bit careful and make sure you're going with good people and stuff. But I only need to do a few a year. You know what I mean? It's not an area I'm trying to build, but it's nice when I do it, and it's nice to meet these people, but you really are hopping into their little family for 10 days or something. So,
Well, I think that's the wonderful thing about your YouTube as well. Like, you're not going to invite someone into your family and be that intimate with you unless you know them. So if I looked at their YouTube search history, they'd probably have quite a few professional boat care videos in there recently watched before they reached out.
Well, when they reach out, they go, "We know you. We've done the interview. We know you. We're confident." But you go and meet them beforehand and you get to know them. And I love it. It's a lovely thing to do, especially for some of these people who have never seen the Queensland coast. That's a real thrill, showing them all the ins and outs of it all.
Yeah, you get to share that, what you love about it. But also, I think that is the wonderful thing about the YouTube, the effort you put into building the channel and showing yourself and telling the stories, is that those conversations, that if you were the sales part of your conversation, or it's more of just do I want to work with them? Because they're already sold on who you are and what you do.
Unexpected too. I didn't think I'd be, it was my clients here that we look after their boats, like the Nordhaven and Skidgy. Well, I do those trips every year. They're great. Yeah, I didn't expect to be doing any outside ones, but it's the YouTube channel that really started that, I suppose.
What does the future look like for professional boat care?
Well, my wife thinks I should do more of those trips away.
So minimal, yes.
Look, I've got my kids are all at home still, but only just, or two of them are skiing in Canada right now, and the other one's she's just back, but she's at uni. So the world's changing in our house. So I might do a few more trips away coming down in the future years. But right now I'm just happy with how it is doing the boat detailing. Obviously I'm getting older now, so me getting on a buffing machine, that doesn't happen very often. So I've got, a great team who are helping me with all that. So the future's just to keep going, really. I like Peter Wright used to say, I'm not going to stop fishing in Cairns until I fall out dead out of the tower. Yes. I like that expression. I want to go till the end too.
Yeah.
Like Dad did, he went to the reef only a few years before he died in the end. So his last trip, he took with a new owner on South Pacific. He was 81 when he went up the reef for his last trip. That's a good effort.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing.
He couldn't hear the radio or know it.
Would have been great to see it. When you love something that much, even when kind of life says this is going to be pretty hard for you, you sure you want to do it, like that passion, to see that in people, I think it's awesome. That's where the good stuff is. You learn the things that really mean a lot to people and how that drives them. Thinking about your legacy, your dad had a big one and you're on track for something very similar. Like, what is it that you want to kind of leave behind?
I love all our waterways, and I want everyone to look after them. I want boating to still, it upsets me to see no one waves anymore when you're out boating. Everyone waved at each other in the old days.
I think that's a nice thing, is continuing the tradition of what boating was for you.
Yeah.
Right? And what it should be for, or like the great things about it for the next generation. You've had a great career. Like, was there a risk that you took in your career that paid off? And how did it change things for you?
Yeah, I think the big risk I took was starting this business, 16 years ago, because, I was over advertising it. I had a mortgage, 3 young kids about to go through private school. It was tough. And, so I did take a big risk, but it paid off. But it was seriously, we had 5 years of, I could hardly put fuel in my car a few times. It was tough. Yeah, I worked on my own in the business for 8 years, going home just about dead every day and pedaling really hard. Yeah, I guess that paid off, and, I couldn't be happier, really. I mean, I'm doing something I love. I seriously like coming to work every day.
What was it about that time that kept you going?
Just having to survive, mate. No, I mean, look, I loved it. Even then, even when I was just exhausted in the sun all day, covered in polish, just going, this is the hardest thing I could ever do, I still loved it. So I kept going at it, and I could see it's just a hard business to scale up detailing. It's so detail orientated and results driven. And, you've got to find special people to work for you that can deliver a good job. And so every time I've built the business up to sort of 3 or 4 people, I've just gone, and brought it right back to 1 or 2, because all I do is run around fixing up things that weren't quite right. So get back to just 1 or 2 of the right guys working for you and be involved. And, we do a bit of that management work as well, just, with meeting other trades on board and where the owners are too busy to be involved. So, but, sometimes I'm surprised that it survived and did so well. And so, I'm really happy with it. I must say, life's good. I mean, it'd be good to earn 3 times as much, but my lifestyle and what this gives me is just so rewarding. And just with all the YouTube and the social media and everything, it's fun, but sharing it all and building your brand and helping out. I seriously get calls every day from people just going, oh, mate, can you just, I watch your video. Can you help us out with this idea or with this boat? And it's good. I like being able to help people for fun. It's nice.
Yeah, it's not always about the money. That's
it's definitely not.
Yeah, you can clearly tell you're doing what you love. So that's awesome. I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
A lot of your YouTube followers and audience would probably love to hear more about your story. Is there a part in your story that we maybe haven't touched on that you think they would love to hear more about?
Well, when I'd done a full season. It was just before I went to work in the UK in advertising. But I said to Dad, "This is my chance to do a season, so I'm going to do it." So I did that, and then at the end of the season, Dad goes, "Well, I've got to go back to work now, so you'll be right to bring the boats home, won't you?" And I was like 24 years old. And I went, you know what? I reckon I can. So I had a crewman who was 18 and our cook. She was, my age. Yeah, so I had to bring both boats home from Cairns at 24 years old before GPS. We had, in those days it was hand-bearing compass and plotting your course on the charts.
Oh my God.
And so that was pretty epic, I thought. We used to tow the game boat around. So dirty big tow line, and it was quite a sight, really. And when you grow up, you sort of don't think much about it, but in later years people go, "Oh, we used to see you coming into Manly Harbour with the game boat on the tow line, and how you pulled it alongside, and then you'd go into your berth." And so that was pretty epic. That was a 22-day trip back from. I got stuck halfway behind an island, and there's a funny side to that story actually, because we're all stuck there. There was a bunch of yachties stuck behind Percy Islands. Have you probably haven't. You always fly straight to Cairns, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Percy Islands, it's sort of central coast off Mackay. Mm-hmm. Terrible anchorage, rolly anchorage. And it's got an A-frame. You might have seen it on one of my videos.
Yeah.
There's an A-frame with all the boat memorabilia on the beach. Anyway, all the yachties were stuck there, and everyone's running out of food and booze and water. And these couple of yachties came over in their little tender and said, because we're the big boat, and I had the game boat anchored in near the beach because it was too rolly to have it alongside. And they were all going, "Oh, mate, have you got any, can you sell us some beer?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, sure. I better ring my father and ask," So, and in those days, there's no phone. So you get on the two-way radio, the old HF radio, and call Townsville radio, and they patch you through to your father. "Dad, these guys want to buy beer." "Yeah, sell them all the light beer first," he said. So, okay. If anyone knows my father, they'll get a giggle out of that. And then I'm selling them food out of the bottom of the freezer. Get the bottom of the freezer, get rid of all that. So I've got this, all these tenders coming up buying all this stuff, and it was funny.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. There was an old hermit on the island who was making honey mead, like a moonshine type thing, and they were all getting upset stomachs from it. So they're coming, "Oh, that's right." And then so I'm selling them all the light beer, but then 4 days later I'm having to pull out all the heavy beer. They go, "Why didn't you sell us this first?" I said, "I didn't know it was there." So we cleaned the boat out, and we all eventually left, but it was a funny time.
Dad would have been happy with that one.
Yeah. Another wild story was when we took the Nordhaven 68, and the owner had a brand new 28-foot Boston whaler, so $500,000 tender to tow with, and he said, "We're going to tow it out to the Coral Sea." So we went right out to Frederick Reef and Saumarez and Ken Reef. I don't know. They're like 350 nautical miles out to sea. You're past helicopter rescue, you're right out. So it was a big thing. And I said, I don't know if we should tow the whaler out there. And he said, "Oh, we'll be right. You've done heaps of towing. You used to tow that family's game boat to Cairns and back every year." I said, "I know, and that's why I don't think we should do it."
Case in point.
Anyway, all right. So I said, "I'm up for the challenge," and he was up for it. He knew there was risks involved, so that's fine. So I overbuilt everything. We had tow line, and everything was just like rock solid. And the whaler, he ordered it with the tender pack, so it had a reinforced tow eye, an alarm and a flashing light. You could hear it tooting when the bilge pump went and light flashed and all. So it had all the things. So we got there. That was fine. We had our great sort of 10 days out there. Didn't see anyone. The fishing was just off the charts. It's where that Nomad operation used to go and stuff. So it's unreal. You don't see anyone. The only thing we saw was a border control drone buzzes, which is pretty wild. And then we lost our internet. It turned out he just needed to turn it on and off, and it rebooted. But
the reset.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, I called my weatherman, who was Ken Brown, who owned that show. Well, he started the show Coast Watch that my sister was on. So I called Brownie and said, Brownie, we can't get a weather update and we want to head back to Brisbane and we're going to beeline it straight back to Fraser. It's like a 56-hour passage with this boat on the tow line. He said, oh, well, Jeno, I can only look out to whatever it was, 100 miles or something. He said, so I don't know what you're dealing with out there, but there's this big trough line. It's just, and I said, yeah, we had that yesterday. We had 35 knots, but we've woken up to this beautiful weather. We want to go. He said, yeah, well, from what I can tell, maybe. So off we went. When I used to tow that whaler, if I knew we were in for a bit of following sea, or even on that trip, I'd actually put a drogue out the back, which was just, it's on some of the videos, it's basically just a tyre with a chain, and we off a bridle off this, and that just stops the whaler surfing. And because if they surf down a wave and broach off, that's when they're going to come tight on brake lines or fittings or whatever. So we run the drone. All good. And I went off and had a camp and woke up that afternoon for my watch and just was like, oh, what's going on? And they said, yeah, I think we've caught up to that trough, as we're running south, and we've gone into this sort of 20, 25 knots of southeast. So it's on our sort of nose a bit. Anyway, we got through the night, no drama, and whalers out there plodding along nicely. And then the next morning, we're still only 20, 25 knots, so it's pretty unpleasant, but it's fine. We're chugging along nicely. Anyway, next thing, two of the guys came running up to the wheelhouse and said, oh, it broke off. The whaler's just broken off. Like, what do you mean?
Shit.
So I looked at the owner and he looked at me like, this is what you're talking about, sort of without saying it. The problem is you've got to put someone in the water, and we're 700 kilometres off the coast. Like, it can't drive on its own power now. We've got to then reattach it, and it's just a lot of risk involved.
Nightmare, yeah.
So we're just looking at it drifting, and he just looked at me and said, well, you said this could happen, and I see what you mean. I'm not putting anyone in the water to get it. So we called AMSA in Canberra and said, here's its coordinates. No one's on board. The funny side story is we did have AIS, but we hadn't turned it on the tender because it flattened the batteries on the way up anyway. So
it
was a calculated risk. So it was a bad move in the end. But so we watched this thing drift off, and off we went. It was all a bit solemn, the mood.
Yeah.
And then
you would have played it a song as it drifted off in the distance, the farewell song.
But I tell you what happened, which was even worse, was that the weather just deteriorated. The barometer was dropping, and we drove into almost a low pressure system in this trough. And so we had 45 knots on our bow on the quarter for all that night. And it was absolutely sketchy. And if we had had that thing on the tow line, I don't know if it would have survived, or it could have been more dangerous to have it there in a way if it had rolled or something. And
put you guys at risk, yeah.
Yeah. So we all sort of forgot about the whaler and survived that night, which was just horrific. And then we got home. I think I was raking the leaves in the backyard. My phone rang and they said, they found it. And luckily, it had only gone 70 miles and it was well outside the shipping lane, so there was no problem with that. And
wow.
Yeah, and they said, so the insurance company sent the plane that goes to Lady Elliot, and they couldn't see it the first day. It was still too rough. The next day they found it, buzzed it, said it's all perfect, and they sent a boat out from Mackay to get it. Apparently they broke the tow line twice, taking it back into Yeppoon it was, I think.
Yeah, right.
Bay. And then on a truck and back to Brisbane here with the tiniest little nick on it. It's perfect. So talk about lucky.
Yeah, lucky. Well, the risk paid off, I guess. Yeah. You probably got home a bit quicker than expected.
It's true. We got that extra knot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
That's the great thing, I think, about what you do and being out on the water is it's so unique. Anything's possible when you're out there, and it's always, even if it's a calm day, it's still a great day, let alone if it's 45 knots and you've got a Boston whaler tied to you.
I don't need that anymore, I got to say.
No.
Getting too old for the rough seas.
Yeah. I've got some rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
What's the wildest thing you've seen in Cooktown?
I think walking up and down the streets is pretty wild.
It is.
There's some really interesting people, great people. I love it. I love Cooktown, I got to say. I think tied up at the wharf there once on Dad's boat, and we were all having breakfast on the back deck. And there was everyone fishes on the wharf there, as you know. The fish that they catch. Anyway, next thing, this guy's reels just screaming, and it's a bit of whoa, and he's right here above us, you know, where it's low tide. Anyway, he winds in a 30-pound Spanish mackerel right off the wharf
Jesus,
there, and he's got no gaff or anything, so we gaffed it for him. I've got video of it still, actually. He gaffed it, and he handed him the gaff, and he pulled it up, and he's like so thankful. And he came back about an hour later while we're still there with a big box of mangoes for us. So
amazing. Got him off the trees down the road. Side of Cigatera.
Yeah, probably. God.
Oh, man. What's the best piece of boating advice that you give to your customers about maintenance?
Just looking after your boat in general is so important, you know. So, I mean, regular washes and keeping the polish up, but just using it. I think the one thing that is probably the one thing I say is you have to use your boat. Constantly use it, because if the minute you stop using it, things are going to start to break, you know. So, and then that's where we come into play, I guess, too, because a lot of them are super busy and super wealthy, and, you know, it's only one of their toys, this beautiful boat, and they got a whole bunch of, so we can go down there and do a bit of a, you know, start everything routinely, you know, even flush all the toilets, run all the pumps, just make everything like someone's on board using it. So, yeah, that's probably the best bit of advice for boat owners, is use them or they will start to die on you.
It is a good one. What's a favorite tool in your boat care arsenal?
Apart from my hands is, I think, chamoising. My pet hate is the boat covered in water spot. And, you know, just keeping it clean and chamois, that's my favourite thing.
A man about the details. I'm probably could have guessed that one. Yeah. What's one item you always bring with you on a trip away?
Apart from my phone with the videoing is, I mean, your glasses, obviously, your Polaroid glasses are crucial, especially where I go up the reef and looking at Marlin and the water and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I just think your glasses are the most important thing, a good pair of polarizing glasses.
If you weren't in boat care, what do you think you'd be doing?
Probably a grumpy old man in advertising.
Just slogging it out, drawing boats.
Maybe. Yeah. I've got a flair for design too. So, everyone used to say that anyway. I don't think I do. But, architecture's always interests me. I do love that side of things. I love boat design.
If you had a superpower on the water, what would it be?
Being able to change the weather. But I used to always like the idea of being able to fly. But now I've got a drone.
Yeah.
So I can go up there and I can look. I mean, that's really useful stuff.
The drone changes your whole, I think, experience of what being on the reef is like. When I'll take a lot of the footage when we're up there and you get to show the guys that are on the boat with you, like, you can see this, but this is what it looks like from above. It's just, you're like, wait, we're actually there? That's nuts. Like, it shows how special it really is, I think, to another level.
When people are out there, it's flat, as you know. There's nothing. There's no islands. There's a bit of broken water along the outer edge or something. Yeah, to get that whole perspective. And how's those photos of, the drone stuff, looking back at boats now, catching fish?
Yeah,
wow,
it's wild.
You've got some of that stuff, haven't you?
It's wild. I do have some, but not from the drone on a Marlin. My drone didn't want to play nicely this last season, so
it's sketchy though, isn't it? Like,
it is very sketchy. Yeah,
I'd love to do it, but I'm flat out on the sticks. I can't get a drone involved.
Yeah. No, that was awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
It's a real pleasure for me.
It's been awesome learning about your journey and so many good stories and insights. And I know, your audience would have loved hearing a lot of that stuff as well and know you more. I think it's fantastic.
Thanks, Steve. Fantastic.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you're keen to know more about Peter and professional boat care, check him out. Check out his YouTube channel, especially. It's awesome. And share this episode with someone who you think would love it as well. And catch you on the next episode of the Rising Tidecast.